You're sabotaging yourself every single day, and you don't even realize it. While you complain about life, blame circumstances, and wait for something magical to happen, there's an ancient truth the Stoics figured out over 2,000 years ago that you're completely ignoring. And here's the worst part, that ignorance is costing you your dreams, your peace, and literally everything you could ever create in your life. Look, I need to be straight with you right now. If you're expecting another feel-good motivational video full of pretty phrases and empty promises, you can leave. What I'm about to share goes against almost everything you've been taught about manifestation, the law of attraction, and personal development. The Stoics had a brutal, no-nonsense method that actually works, and the scariest part, it works so well that it will completely destroy who you are today in order to build who you need to become. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and the most powerful man in the known world at the time, wrote something in Meditations that should be burned into your mind. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Sounds simple, right? But you have no idea how deep that really goes. He's not talking about positive thinking. He's pointing at something far more unsettling. While you're busy complaining about your job, your bank account, or your relationship, the Stoics had already figured out that you are literally the architect of your own prison. Every thought you let into your mind without questioning it, every emotion you allow to take over, every automatic reaction you have, all of it is building the bars of your cage, and you don't even notice. Seneca, another giant of Stoicism, said something that should make you uncomfortable. It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult. Let me translate that for you. That thing you want to manifest, that dream you keep talking about, that life you say you want, it's not far away because it's impossible. It's far away because you're too afraid to do what needs to be done. Wait, before you close this video in anger, understand this. I'm not attacking you. I'm waking you up. Because the truth hurts, but lies keep you trapped. And you've been living on comfortable lies for far too long. Let's talk about real manifestation now. Forget everything you've read about visualizing your future while meditating to calming music. The Stoics had a completely opposite approach, and it's brutally more effective. Epictetus, who was a slave before becoming one of the greatest philosophers in history, developed a principle that will flip your life upside down. He divided everything into two categories: things you can control and things you can't. That's it. Simple. But here's the shock. You control almost nothing that happens to you. You don't control the economy. You don't control other people's actions. You don't control the past. You don't control the future. The only thing you truly control is your choices in the present moment. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions. That's it. And here's the part that really messes with your head. While you waste energy trying to control what you can't, you end up with no energy left to control the only place where you have real power. It's like trying to drive a car while staring only at the rearview mirror, then complaining that you can't see the road. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet that's exactly what you do every day. Now comes the part of Stoicism nobody likes to talk about. The Stoics practice something called premeditatio malorum, which means rehearsing the worst-case scenario. They deliberately imagined everything going wrong, losing money, losing people, losing status, losing health. And I know what you're thinking. Isn't that negative thinking? Won't that attract bad things? Listen closely. This is the difference between ancient wisdom and modern nonsense. The Stoics knew that when you face your fears head-on, when you look directly at the worst possible outcome and prepare yourself mentally, two things happen. First, you stop being afraid. Second, you start taking action because you realize that even in the worst case, you survive. Marcus Aurelius would wake up every day reminding himself that he could die that day. The Emperor of Rome, with all the power in the world, started his mornings by contemplating his own death. And do you know why? Because once you accept that you can lose everything, including your life, you stop clinging to small things and you start living for real. Here's the truth that can set you free. Manifesting anything you want has nothing to do with asking the universe or visualizing abundance. It has everything to do with becoming the kind of person who naturally creates and attracts that reality. And to become that person, you have to kill who you are today. Let me be even clearer. The version of you right now, with your fears, your excuses, and your limiting thought patterns, cannot have the life you want. It's impossible, because the life you want requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And creating that version means destroying the old one. No mercy, no shortcuts, no negotiation. Seneca wrote, "It is the mind that makes a person rich. It can follow them into exile, into the desert, into prison." Do you see how deep that goes? Your wealth, your freedom, your happiness, none of that is out there. It's in here. And if it's in here, you have full access to it right now, not tomorrow, not when you land that job, not when you meet the right person, now. But you don't access it because you're too busy playing the victim, too busy blaming, too busy waiting. The Stoics called this living like a walking corpse. You're biologically alive, but existentially dead, moving through life on autopilot, reacting instead of acting, being pushed instead of pulling. Now let's get to the point that actually changes everything. The Stoics figured out something that modern science has only recently confirmed. Your thoughts are not you. Let me repeat that, because this is crucial. Your thoughts are not you. They're just events happening in your mind, like clouds passing through the sky. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But here's the irony. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control external events while leaving their own mind completely unmanaged. It's like owning an entire kingdom and spending all your time trying to rule your neighbor's land. It makes no sense. Here's the brutal process that erases your old self. Step 1. Stop identifying with your thoughts. When a thought of failure shows up, you don't say, "I am a failure." You observe it and say, "There's a thought about failure appearing right now." It sounds subtle, but that distance changes everything, because now you're no longer inside the thought. You're watching it. Epictetus had a devastatingly effective technique for this. He said, "It's not things that disturb people, but their judgments about those things. When something bad happens, it's not the event that destroys you. It's the story you tell yourself about the event." And here's the shock. You're choosing that story. You may not realize it, but you are. Someone rejects you, that's a neutral fact. Then you add a story. "I was rejected because I'm not good enough. I'll never find anyone. I'm a failure." That story isn't reality. It's an interpretation. And interpretations can be changed. The Stoics spent hours every day reinterpreting events, turning obstacles into opportunities, turning losses into lessons. Not out of naive optimism, but because they understood something most people miss. Reality is neutral. Meaning comes from you. Now, if this is resonating with you, if you feel like something here is clicking, I need you to do one thing. Hit the like button right now. That tells the algorithm that real content, the kind that actually changes lives, needs to reach more people. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now. Because what comes next goes even deeper. Let's talk about action. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. And you're not here to be entertained. You're here to transform. The Stoics were obsessed with action, but not the frantic, non-stop busyness modern society glorifies. They believed in action aligned with principle. Seneca was ruthless about this. He said, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." Are you waiting for the perfect moment? It doesn't exist. Waiting to feel ready? You never will. Waiting for more resources? You'll be waiting forever. The only thing that matters is what you do with what you have right now. Here's the Stoic formula for creating anything you want. First, clearly define what you want. Not vague goals like, "I want to be happy" or "I want to be rich." but something specific. Second, identify the type of person who achieves that. What virtues do they have? How do they think? How do they act? Third, start acting like that person now, not tomorrow, now. And here's the part that will make you question everything. You don't act a certain way so that someday you become that person. You become that person the moment you start acting like them. Transformation doesn't come after action. Transformation is action. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he said, "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your actions." But there's a problem. You're addicted to comfort, addicted to avoiding pain, addicted to procrastination, and those addictions are quietly killing your dreams. The Stoics practice something called ascesis, which means voluntary training through discomfort. They deliberately put themselves in uncomfortable situations to strengthen their character. Seneca slept on hard beds on purpose, took cold baths, fasted, wore simple clothes despite being wealthy. Why? To train his mind not to depend on external comfort for inner peace, because he knew that if your peace depends on external conditions, you'll never be free. You'll be a slave to circumstances. So here's the question you need to answer with brutal honesty. What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? Everything has a price. Everything. You want wealth? The price is daily discipline, hard decisions, calculated risks. You want a healthy body? The price is training when you don't feel like it, choosing food that nourishes instead of food that only satisfies in the moment. You want deep relationships? The price is vulnerability, honest communication, real presence. But here's the trick. You're already paying a price. The price of mediocrity, the price of dissatisfaction, the price of regret. The difference is that price gets you nowhere. You can choose your price, but you cannot avoid paying one. Epictetus spent years as a slave and still developed such profound inner freedom that when he was finally freed, he said slavery had never touched his true self, because he understood something most people don't. You can be physically chained and internally free, or physically free and enslaved by your desires, fears, and need for approval. So the question isn't whether you're free or enslaved. The question is, enslaved to what? Your fears, your excuses, other people's opinions, comfort, laziness? Because if you're enslaved to any of those, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how many doors are open to you, you're still trapped. Here's the liberating truth. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, you gain full power over it. As long as you blame the economy, your parents, your past, the government, or bad luck, you're giving your power away. You're saying, I'm a victim, and victims don't create anything. Victims only suffer. But the moment you say, my life is the result of my choices, and from now on I'll choose differently, everything changes, because now you're no longer waiting for the world to change. You are the change. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire through plagues, wars, and betrayals. He had every reason to feel like a victim. Instead, he chose to see every challenge as a chance to practice virtue, every betrayal as an opportunity to practice forgiveness, every war as a test of courage. He turned hell into a classroom. And you? How are you transforming your challenges? Are you complaining or growing? Blaming or creating, waiting or executing? Because the difference between people who manifest their dreams and people who only dream comes down to these daily choices. They look small, but they are monumental. Let's talk about the most powerful and most misunderstood idea in Stoicism, Amor, Fati, love of fate. And no, this is not about passively accepting whatever happens to you. It's something much deeper and much more radical. It's looking at everything that has happened in your life, including the awful parts, and not just accepting them, but loving them. Loving them because all of it brought you exactly to where you are now. Nietzsche, who studied the Stoics closely, summed this up perfectly. My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, wanting nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bearing what is necessary, but loving it. That goes completely against everything you've been taught about manifestation, doesn't it? You were told to reject the negative, focus only on the positive, pretend problems don't exist. The Stoics knew that was an illusion. Problems exist, pain exists, loss exists, and pretending they don't doesn't make you strong, it makes you fragile. Because when reality inevitably shows up at your door, you collapse. But when you embrace reality as it is, when you even learn to love the hard parts, you become unbreakable. Here's the process. Take the worst thing that ever happened to you, the thing you spent years trying to forget, bury, deny. Now look at it honestly and ask, what did this teach me? How did it strengthen me? What doors did it open that would have stayed closed if it had never happened? And here's the shocking part. You'll realize that awful thing was absolutely necessary for you to become who you are today. That doesn't mean it was good, it means it was useful. The Stoics weren't masochists who celebrated suffering. They were pragmatists who used everything, absolutely everything, as fuel for growth. Seneca lost everything multiple times in his life. He was exiled, betrayed, nearly executed, and each time he came back stronger because he extracted lessons from every experience. Now let's get to the principle that will completely change how you think about manifestation. The Stoics understood that you don't control outcomes. You plant a seed, but you don't control whether it grows. You can do everything right and the seed might still not sprout. Does that mean you failed? No. It means you did your part, and the rest was never in your control. Apply this to any area of life. You want to build a business? You control your actions. You control how much you study, how much you work, how strategic you are, but you don't control how the market responds, whether people buy or whether the economy cooperates. So what's the correct focus? The process, not the outcome. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish. Wish that they happen as they do, and you will be happy." That's not resignation, that's strategic wisdom. Because when you stop fighting reality, you get all that energy back to work with reality. It's the difference between swimming against the current and using the current to your advantage. Marcus Aurelius had a brutal mental exercise. He imagined that everything that happened was exactly what he had asked the gods for. Someone betrayed him. He thanked the gods for revealing that person's true character. A war broke out. He thanked them for the opportunity to show leadership under pressure. Illness arrived. He thanked them for the reminder of life's impermanence. Do you see the power in that? When you reinterpret everything as useful, you become unstoppable. There's no more defeat, only feedback. No more failure, only learning, no more luck or bad luck, only what is and you using what is to grow. But there's an even deeper truth here. You don't need to wait for good things to happen to be happy. You can be happy now, not a happiness that depends on external achievements, a happiness that comes from living virtuously, regardless of circumstances. The Stoics called this eudaimonia. It's not pleasure, it's flourishing. It's functioning at your highest potential as a human being. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He had everything money could buy. And he said something unsettling. It is not the man who has little, but the man who desires more, who is poor. You can have millions and be poor. You can have very little and be rich. Because real wealth is independence from need. It's needing little, not having a lot. And this is where most people completely miss the point about manifestation. They think they'll be happy when they get the thing, the house, the car, the relationship, the body. And when they get it, the happiness lasts a few weeks. Then the emptiness comes back. Why? Because happiness was never in the thing. It was in the process of becoming the person capable of achieving the thing. The Stoics knew the value lies in the character built during the pursuit, not in the object obtained. Marcus Aurelius could have anything in the world, and he chose to live simply, wake up early, do his duty, study philosophy. Why? Because he understood that access to everything means nothing. Discipline to choose what is virtuous means everything. So here's the question that can change your life. What kind of person do you want to become? Not what you want to have, who you want to be. Because when you focus on being, having becomes a natural consequence. But when you focus on having, you never become anything. You just keep chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next goal, without ever arriving. Epictetus taught his students to constantly ask, "Is this within my control? If yes, act. If not, accept." That's it. But you complicate everything. You replay the past you can't change. You worry about futures that may never happen. You try to control other people who have free will, and in the process, you lose the only moment where you actually have power. This moment, right now. Here's a practical exercise that can transform everything. For 7 days, every time you catch yourself thinking about something you can't control, stop, breathe, and redirect your attention to something you can control in that moment. This isn't about suppressing thoughts. It's about training attention. Taking your power back from anxiety and regret. Marcus Aurelius woke up every day preparing himself to deal with difficult people. He literally told himself, "Today I will meet people who are intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and antisocial." But he didn't stop there. He continued, "They are this way because they don't know the difference between right and wrong. But I do, so they cannot harm me." That's mastery. He didn't expect the world to be perfect. He prepared for the world as it is. And when you're prepared, you're not surprised. You're not offended. You're not knocked off your path. You just keep doing what needs to be done. Now we're getting to the part that really wipes out your old self. Up to this point, you've understood the principles, but principles without application are just late-night bar philosophy. And you're not here to have interesting conversations. You're here to radically change your life. So let's get into the brutal method the Stoics used to completely rewire the mind. First, practical principle, negative visualization. This goes against everything you've heard about the law of attraction, but hear me out. Every day, for 10 minutes, you imagine losing everything you have. Your health, the people you love, your money, your reputation, all of it. You don't do this to suffer. You do it to wake up, because the moment you truly understand that everything can disappear at any time, you stop taking things for granted and you start living for real. Seneca did this religiously. He imagined losing his wealth, being exiled again, losing friends. And you know what happened when those things actually happened in real life? He was ready. He wasn't shattered. He didn't spiral into depression. He adjusted and kept going. Because he had already lived through it 1,000 times in his mind. He had already processed the loss. He had already made peace with impermanence. Here's the brutal truth. You will lose everything eventually. Your youth will fade. Your health will decline. The people around you will die or drift away. You will die. These are not possibilities. They are guarantees. You can spend your life running from these facts, living in denial, or you can face them now and free yourself. When you practice negative visualization daily, something remarkable happens. You develop what the Stoics called apatheia. This is not apathy in the sense of not caring. It means not being ruled by emotions. You still feel them, but they don't control you. It's the difference between being inside an emotional storm and watching the storm from solid ground. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment about it, and you have the power to revoke that judgment at any moment." Let me break that down. Nothing has the power to make you suffer. Nothing. Your suffering always comes from your interpretation, the meaning you assign to events, and interpretation is a choice. Now the second practical principle, Memento Mori, remembering death. The Stoics surrounded themselves with reminders of mortality, skulls, hourglasses, written phrases. Why? Because when you remember you're going to die, the small stuff stops mattering. Trivial worries evaporate. The urgency to live honestly takes over. Are you postponing that hard conversation, that dream, that change you know you need to make? Why? Do you really think you have unlimited time? Epictetus said, It is impossible to live well if you believe you are immortal. The illusion of endless time makes you waste the limited time you actually have. You procrastinate, you delay, you wait for the perfect moment that never comes. Here's the exercise that changes everything. Every night before you sleep, ask yourself, if I died tomorrow, would I be proud of how I lived today? And be brutally honest. If the answer is no, something needs to change immediately. Because every day you live below your potential is a day you will never get back. It's gone forever. Seneca had a powerful habit. At the end of each day he reviewed everything he had done. Every decision, every word, every action. And he asked himself, what did I improve today? What weakness did I fight? Where did I grow? He wouldn't go to sleep until he extracted lessons from the day. Not to punish himself, but to recalibrate. To make sure tomorrow would be better than today. And you? You fall asleep watching TV or scrolling social media, stuffing your mind with junk before shutting it down. Then you wake up the same way you went to bed, live the same day as yesterday, repeat the same mistakes, think the same thoughts, and wonder why nothing changes. Nothing changes because you don't change. Third practical principle. Daily, virtuous action. The Stoics identified 4 core virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And they didn't see virtue as an abstract idea. They saw it as concrete actions you practice every single day. Wisdom is making choices based on principles, not impulses. Courage is doing what's right even when it's hard. Justice is treating others fairly. Temperance is self-control in every area of life. So here's the challenge. Every day, you consciously practice each of these virtues. It doesn't matter how small the action is. You learn something new, that's wisdom. You have the difficult conversation you've been avoiding, courage. You help someone without expecting anything in return, justice. You say no to short-term pleasure in favor of a bigger goal, temperance. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, saw life as constant training in virtue. He said, think of the qualities you admire in others: energy, integrity, humility, kindness. Now realize that you can develop those same qualities. They're already within you. Use them. But here's where most people fail. You want instant change. You want to wake up tomorrow completely transformed. And when that doesn't happen, you quit. The Stoics understood that real transformation is gradual. It's compound interest applied to character, small improvements every day that add up to extraordinary results over time. Epictetus had students who wanted to become philosophers overnight, and he was ruthless with them. First, practice not letting people know who you are. Live your philosophy quietly for a while. Why? Because talking about change is easy. Living it is hard. And most people prefer the illusion of transformation to the real thing. Fourth practical principle, voluntary discomfort. Once a week, deliberately put yourself in discomfort. Take a cold shower, fast, sleep on the floor, stay silent for a day. The goal isn't suffering for its own sake. It's training your mind not to depend on constant comfort. Because when you depend on comfort, you become its slave. Seneca did this regularly. He lived like a poor man for a few days, eating simple food, wearing rough clothes, sleeping in harsh conditions. Then he returned to his normal life, but now with deep appreciation for what he had, and with the certainty that if he lost everything, he would survive. That certainty gives you an insane level of freedom. Here's what happens when you practice voluntary discomfort. You realize your limits are far beyond what you thought. That thing you believed was impossible, possible. That fear that paralyzed you, manageable. That need you thought was essential, optional. And that realization changes everything. You stop being a hostage to circumstances. You stop needing everything to be perfect before you act. You stop waiting for motivation to do what needs to be done, because you've trained your mind to function in any condition. Comfortable or uncomfortable, motivated or not, with resources or without, you just do the work. Marcus Aurelius had access to every luxury imaginable, and he chose to live simply, not out of moral purity, but out of strategy, because he knew that the more you need externally to be happy, the more vulnerable you are, and the less you need, the more powerful you become. That's the math of freedom. Now the fifth practical principle, continuous presence. The Stoics were obsessed with the present moment, not because the past and future don't matter, but because the present is the only place where action is possible. You can't change the past, you can't control the future, but you can fully control what you do right now. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." And here's the mental shift that changes everything. When something happens, anything at all, you have 3 seconds. 3 seconds to choose your response. In those 3 seconds, you can react automatically, letting old patterns run the show. Or you can respond consciously, exercising your power of choice. Those 3 seconds are where real transformation happens. They're the space between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who studied Stoicism, identified as the seat of human freedom. In that space, you choose who you are. And every choice you make there either builds you or destroys you. Here's the brutal practice. Every time something bothers you today, pause, count to 3. And in those 3 seconds, ask yourself, how would the best version of me respond to this? Not how you usually respond, but how the version of you who has already become everything you want to be would respond. Then act as that person. Marcus Aurelius had a powerful technique for this. He imagined himself being watched by the greatest thinkers in history, Socrates, Zeno, Chrysippus, and he asked himself, how would I act if they were watching me right now? That kept him aligned with his principles even when no one else was watching, especially when no one was watching, because here's the truth, no one tells you who you are when nobody's looking is who you really are. Everything else is performance. You can fool the whole world, but you can't fool your own conscience. Seneca put it this way, live among people as if the gods were watching, speak with the gods as if people were listening. Now let's talk about relationships through a Stoic lens, because you won't build anything meaningful alone, and most of your problems come from how you deal with other people. The Stoics had a radical perspective on this. Epictetus taught, if you expect people to be the way you want them to be, you'll suffer. If you expect them to be who they are, you'll find peace. Are you trying to change people? Control how they think, feel, or act? Good luck, you'll die frustrated. People are who they are. You can influence, you can inspire, but you can't control. And the moment you stop trying to control, you can finally connect for real. Because real connection only happens when you accept people as they are, not as you want them to be. Marcus Aurelius dealt with traitors, incompetence, and manipulation, and he chose to see every difficult person as a teacher. Someone betrays you? Learn about trust and character judgment. Someone criticizes you unfairly. Learn equanimity and self-awareness. Someone rejects you? Learn detachment and self-reliance. Nothing is wasted if you extract the lesson. Here's the exercise that will transform your relationships. For every person who irritated you today, write down 3 things. First, what this person taught you about yourself. Second, how you could respond more virtuously. Third, how you can use this situation to grow. Do this consistently, and difficult people stop being problems and start becoming opportunities. But there's a deeper truth here. The people who irritate you the most are mirrors. They reflect parts of you that you don't want to see. Arrogant people annoy you. Look at your own arrogance. Cowardice frustrates you. Look at your own fear. Fake people disgust you. Look at where you're not being honest. The Stoics knew that your judgments of others say more about you than about them. Seneca wrote something unsettling. It's hard for a man to feel shame before himself when he's alone and unwatched. But if he feels no shame before himself, Before whom will he feel it? Your integrity isn't tested when people are watching. It's tested when you're alone, when no one will ever know, when you could get away with it. Now let's talk about the idea that will completely change how you see failure. The Stoics didn't believe in failure. They believed in feedback. You tried something and it didn't work? Good. Now you know one way that doesn't work. You're closer to what does. Thomas Edison, who studied Stoic philosophy, famously said about inventing the light bulb, "I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." But you quit at the first obstacle, the first no, the first rejection. Why? Because you interpret those moments as proof that you're not good enough. The Stoics saw them as proof that you're still learning. Same situation, completely different meaning, completely different outcome. Epictetus had a harsh training exercise. He told his students to go to the marketplace and try to sell something at an absurd price, knowing they'd be rejected. The goal wasn't to sell, it was to practice rejection, to desensitize the ego, to prove to themselves that rejection doesn't kill you. And once you know rejection won't kill you, you're free to try anything. Here's the Stoic formula for dealing with setbacks. First, extract the lesson. What did you learn? What would you do differently? Second, let go of the outcome. You tried. It didn't work. Move on. Third, try again, wiser this time. That's it. But you complicate everything by telling dramatic stories about what failure says about you. Marcus Aurelius lost battles, lost children, lost people he loved. And each time he practiced Amor Fati. This had to happen for me to learn what I needed to learn. This is part of my path. Not passive resignation, active acceptance. Using everything, absolutely everything, as fuel for growth. Now the sixth practical principle, daily contribution. The Stoics believed humans are social beings by nature. You're not here just for yourself. You're here to contribute, to leave the world a little better than you found it. Marcus Aurelius said, "What's not good for the hive is not good for the bee." Every day, you need to do something for someone else without expecting anything in return. It can be small. Help a stranger. Teach something. Truly listen to someone. Do your work with excellence, even if no one notices, because contribution isn't about recognition. It's about alignment with your deepest human nature. Here's the beautiful paradox. The more you give without expecting anything back, the more you receive. Not because the universe magically rewards you, but because giving changes you internally. It makes you feel part of something bigger. It connects you to purpose. It frees you from the prison of selfishness. And once you step out of that prison, you're finally free to build something real. Seneca gave away much of his wealth. Epictetus taught for free. Marcus Aurelius used his power to serve, not out of obligation, but because they understood that a life worth living is a life devoted to something greater than yourself. And when you live that way, the question stops being, "What can I get?" and becomes, "How can I contribute?" And here's the final test. You've watched this far. You've absorbed the ideas. You understand the philosophy. But none of it matters if you don't act. So here's the challenge that separates passive consumers from people who actually transform. For the next 7 days, you'll implement one principle per day. Day 1, negative visualization. 10 minutes imagining losing everything. Day 2, Memento Mori. Live as if today were your last. Day 3, virtue practice. Wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. Day 4, voluntary discomfort. Choose discomfort and face it. Day 5, present response. Use the 3 seconds before every reaction. Day 6, relationship alchemy. See difficult people as teachers. Day 7, contribution. Give without expecting anything back. If you do this, truly do it, you won't recognize who you were 7 days ago, because you won't be that person anymore. You'll have started the process of dissolving your old self and building who you need to become. And after those 7 days, you keep going, because transformation isn't a destination. It's a continuous path. Here we are at the final point, the deepest truth. The one that will either seal your transformation or leave you exactly where you are. And this truth is simple but devastating. You already have everything you need to manifest anything you want. You always have. The problem was never a lack of resources, opportunities, or luck. The problem was always you. Marcus Aurelius summed this up in a sentence that should be etched into your soul. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Do you feel how deep that goes? The strength you keep looking for out there in perfect circumstances, ideal conditions, or the right timing has always been inside you, just waiting for you to wake up and claim it. The Stoics discovered something modern psychology only confirmed 2,000 years later. Your mind is flexible. Your thought patterns can be reprogrammed. Your automatic reactions can be transformed into conscious responses. You are not stuck as the version of yourself that exists today. That version is just a collection of mental habits repeated so often they feel like your identity. But they're not. Epictetus spent years chained as a slave and still developed more inner freedom than most people who are physically free ever will. How? Because he understood that freedom isn't the absence of external chains, it's the presence of inner mastery. And inner mastery doesn't depend on anything outside you. It depends only on your choice to exercise it. So here's the final question, the one that defines everything. Are you ready to die? Not physically, psychologically. Are you ready to let all your excuses die? All the victim stories? All the patterns that keep you small? Because as long as you cling to that old identity, even if it hurts, you will never manifest the life you want. That life requires a different person. Seneca faced literal death with calm. When Emperor Nero ordered him to take his own life, Seneca was ready. He had practiced that moment in his mind 1,000 times. And when it came, he simply acted. No drama, no fear, no regret. Because he had lived according to his principles. He had done what he came to do. He was complete. You don't need to wait for physical death to complete your mission. You can complete it today, right now, in this moment. The real question is, what is your mission? What are you here to do? I'm not talking about career or money. I'm talking about existential purpose. What mark do you want to leave? What difference do you want to make? Who do you want to be when your story ends? Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the world, and he knew it was all temporary. One day, someone else would rule. Someone else would be emperor. His achievements would be forgotten. So what mattered? He concluded that only character mattered, the virtues he practiced, the person he became, because that no one could take from him, not even death. Now comes the most important part of everything you've heard so far. Manifesting anything you want is not about techniques. It's not about affirmations. It's not about visualization. It's about identity transformation. When you become the kind of person who naturally has what you desire, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop forcing and start flowing. You stop fighting and start creating. The Stoics had a concept called oikeiosis. It means becoming familiar with what is truly yours, becoming familiar with your true nature. When you strip away social conditioning, the masks you wear, the personas you've adopted, what remains? The Stoics believed what remains is natural goodness, rationality, and connection to everything that exists. But you buried that under layers of fear, ego, and the need for approval so deeply that you don't even recognize it anymore. So the work isn't becoming someone new. It's removing everything that isn't you, sculpting your essence by removing the excess. Michelangelo said the statue was already inside the marble. He just removed what wasn't the statue. You're the same. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And it sounds simple, but most people never complete the first step. They never truly decide who they want to be. They try to be everything to everyone, shifting with every situation, never developing a solid core. And without a solid core, you're just a leaf in the wind. Any breeze can carry you away. So here's the final exercise, The most important one, take a piece of paper right now. Write down who you want to be in one sentence, not what you want to have, who you want to be. For example, I want to be someone who acts with integrity regardless of the consequences. Or, I want to be someone who meaningfully reduces suffering in the world. Or, I want to be someone who lives authentically without fear of judgment. From now on, filter every decision through that identity. Is this aligned with who I want to be? If yes, do it. If not, don't. That's it. And here's the magic. When you consistently make decisions aligned with your chosen identity, you become that person. Not eventually, immediately, because you are your actions, not your intentions. Marcus Aurelius guided every decision with one question. Does this contribute to the common good? If yes, he did it. If not, he declined. Comfort didn't matter. Profit didn't matter. Popularity didn't matter. Alignment with his principles did. That consistency over decades created one of the greatest leaders in history. Now here's the final reality you must accept. You will fail. Often. You'll fall back into old patterns. You'll forget your principles. You'll react instead of respond. You'll be hypocritical. You'll be weak. And all of that is part of the process. The Stoics didn't seek perfection. They sought progress. They didn't compare themselves to impossible ideals. They compared themselves to who they were yesterday. Seneca said, "It is not a disgrace to fall, but it is a disgrace to remain fallen." You will fall. The question is how long you stay on the ground. Minutes, hours, days, years? Or do you get up immediately, extract the lesson, and continue? Because the only real failure is quitting. As long as you keep going, you are winning. Here's the truth that will fully free you. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. You don't need to never fail. You need to learn from every failure. You don't need all the answers. You need to ask the right questions. And the most important question of all is this: am I living according to my values or according to my excuses? Epictetus went from slave to one of the most respected philosophers in Rome. How? Because he never used his circumstances as an excuse. He had every excuse imaginable. He was enslaved, he was tortured, he was crippled, and he chose to see it all as training to strengthen his character. So when he was physically freed, he had already been internally free for years. So here's the final commitment you need to make, not to me, not to Stoicism, to yourself, today, right now, in this moment. You decide you will no longer live like a walking corpse. You will no longer accept mediocrity. You will no longer hide behind excuses. You will no longer wait for permission, perfect timing, or ideal circumstances. You will act like the person who has already manifested everything you want. You'll think like them. Decide like them, behave like them, and by doing that consistently, you will become them. This isn't magic, it's math, cause and effect. It's you finally using universal principles in your favor instead of against you. Marcus Aurelius left a legacy that has survived 2,000 years, not because he was emperor. There were thousands of emperors, but because he lived his principles, because his meditations, written only for himself, never meant for publication, reveal a man committed to excellence of character above all else. So what will your legacy be? When you're gone, what will people remember? That you complained a lot, that you had endless excuses, that you wasted your potential, or that you lived with integrity, faced your fears, contributed meaningfully, and inspired others to do the same. The choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be. You can close this video and return to your old life. It will be comfortable, familiar, and it will take you exactly where you've always been. Or you can implement these principles starting now. It will be uncomfortable, scary, and it will take you places you can't even imagine. If you made it this far, if you watched this entire video, you've already shown something important. You're hungry for more. You know there's something greater waiting for you. The only question left is this: will you pursue it, or will you keep dreaming about it? So here's my final question for you. If you're committed to your transformation, if you're going to apply these Stoic principles, if you're ready to erase your old self and build who you need to become, write this in the comments. I choose to become. 3 words. Big commitment. When you write it publicly, you create accountability. You declare intent, and declaration turns possibility into reality. If you want to go deeper, there are 2 videos on screen right now to continue this journey. One on using Stoicism to build real wealth, another on applying these ideas to relationships. Click one and keep going. And if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, subscribe now. This is just the beginning. There's much more brutal truth, ancient wisdom, and content that will challenge, provoke, and transform you. Remember Marcus Aurelius's words, "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts." You've just planted powerful seeds in your mind. Now water them with consistent action and watch your entire life transform. Brutal Stoicism doesn't promise ease. It promises truth. It doesn't promise comfort. It promises freedom. It doesn't promise everything will work out. It promises you'll be ready for whatever happens. And in the end, that preparation, that inner strength, that mastery over your own mind is everything you truly need to manifest anything you want. Now go and become who you were born to be.